that if you could go to a Presbyterian conference about liturgical dance and no one would ever leave their seats. That's how much we love the words and the talking and the theoretical. Now, given that we're on Zoom, we're not going to leave our seats necessarily, but we are going to be moving around in as far as Zoom allows us to do. But before we do any of that, I'm going to invite you, if you are able, and if you are not, don't worry about it. I'm going to invite you, I'm going to type a code and a website into the chat here, and I'm also going to share my screen. And so I'm going to invite you to open that. If it's on the same computer, on a different computer, there is a website called Menti, MENTI.com. And the code is 438104. Can you see my screen sharing? Is that showing up for folks? And this is the question, and you can put up to 3 words in there. What feelings arise when you hear the word play? And as you start putting them in there, those words are going to populate on the screen that I'm sharing. I invite you to go ahead and do that now if you are able. What feelings arise when you hear the word play? Or what words arise when you hear the word play? Getting started. I like it. Children. Yeah. Isn't this a cool tool? I wish I could claim some knowledge. A friend of mine showed this to me, and it's such a fun tool. It's one of those word clouds. The bigger the word, the more often it tends to show up. These are great words. Absolutely delightful. Fun is like taking center stage here. Look at this. Wonderful. That's wonderful. And feel free to keep popping them in there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but you are welcome to continue to add your own words to that, and we will revisit this toward the end of our time together. I do that because we are going to be talking about play, and it's interesting to me that a lot of these words that are popping up it's quite a few of them that are centered around childhood. And there's this really interesting dynamic where we tend to think of play as the work of children, and then we get down to serious business. And I want to invite you to consider the idea that play can be very serious work and important work and soulful work. We talk about Sabbath, that need for space. I think play can inhabit some of that same arena for us if we let it. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be playing a series of games, or if that's uncomfortable for you, we'll call them exercises. And I will give instructions for each of the games, and then I will work with one of your Presbyterian leadership folks, vision leadership folks, to demonstrate what that game looks like. And then we're going to be moving into breakout rooms. You should be able to mute and unmute yourselves for those times. And we will, in the breakout rooms, we're going to play those games. Now, this is something I want to make sure that you understand, embrace, focus on. When you're in those breakout rooms, it's going to be helpful because everybody's screen, the pictures show up in different orders. So I'm going to invite you to, the very first thing you do is to make sure you know everybody's name and put the first name in alphabetical order. And that's going to be your order of a virtual circle, as it were. So Alvin would go first, and Betty would go second, and Colin would go third. And then it would, if it's only 3 people in there, it would loop back around to Alvin. Is that clear what we're talking about? Thumbs up, nods. Excellent, excellent. So that's going to be important to make sure that you know what you're doing in there. And you probably have a range of feelings around play for yourself. And I'm going to encourage you to move beyond your comfort zone today if it's an unsettling feeling, this idea of play, because what unsettles us might just be Jesus. So I'm going to invite you to lean into that and have some fun today. Now, I'm also aware, I also want to make sure that those of you that are joining us by video can turn on your cameras, because we're going to be doing some physical activities here. So if your camera is off, please turn it on. I know some people might not be able to do it, but if you can turn your camera on, that would be lovely. Now, I have 2 children, and they are both doing school virtually. And I have learned that some kids have figured out how to use the technology to their advantage by recording a little looping video of themselves sitting in front of a Zoom screen and nodding periodically, and then they can be off doing stuff. So I'm going to work with us now to make sure that your cameras are working and that you're not trying to fool me with some kind of looping video here. So if you can just kind of move into the camera, uncomfortably close, maybe even. And then maybe rotate yourself sideways if you can. And then just do some strange, I invite you into some silliness here. I especially want Beth and your collar. I think that would be lovely to add some silliness to the collar there. So there we go. Thank you. This is delightful. I hope someone is capturing screen grabs of this that we can share with our congregations. Lovely. Y'all did a wonderful time. There's a lovely phrase that comes from the world of improv that says one of the hesitations around jumping into games is I might look stupid. Well, here's the reality. No one ever looks stupid having fun. So jump in. You look silly and you looked beautiful jumping at the screen. So thank you for doing that. The first game we're going to do is a lovely little game called That's Awesome. And in a moment, we're going to go into breakout rooms. But first, I want to demonstrate it for you. And what's going to happen is, again, remember that order, that alphabetical order by first name. And if the breakout room continues for any of these games, just keep going in that circle until you're sent back into the main room. So if you've gone all the way through the alphabet, then you start back at the top and keep going. We'll move through a couple of different iterations of all of these things. So this first game is very simple. Each of you in that order in your breakout rooms is going to say your name and then one thing that is true about you. And no matter what that person says, everybody else in that breakout room is going to throw your arms in the air, unless you're holding your phone, don't do that, but throw your arms in the air and say, "That's awesome!" So we're going to, thank you, Stephen. I want us to practice that together. I'm going to say something and then I want you to practice the "that's awesome" part. My name is Marthame and it is warmer in Atlanta than I would like it to be still. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Good job. Let's do it one more time. I'm going to say another thing, and I want to make sure if you're not doing it, I'm going to encourage you to do it. To throw those arms up in the air and say, "That's awesome." My name is Marthame, and I am surrounded by pictures that were drawn by my children. That's awesome. Right? Okay. We got the game. We got the notion. It's so simple, right? So Rhonda, can you move us into breakout rooms for, if you can do 2 minutes, that would be lovely. If there's whatever the low limit is, let's go ahead and do that. Raise your hand if you made it around the circle more than once. Keep your hands up if it made it more than twice. Dang, Tilly, I see Tilly's hand. More than 3 times? Excellent. Good. Thank y'all. Let's see. Stephen, where are you? Are you on my screen? Where are you?
I am always anywhere you are.
You are always on my mind. Stephen's going to help me demonstrate one of the miraculous characteristics about improv, and there is this material known as improv goo. I'm holding it right now. It is invisible. But what's beautiful about it is it can be shaped into any shape, size, or weight. And it takes on all the characteristics of that thing that you shape it into. So I'm going to take this improv goo, and through the magic of technology, I'm going to pass it through my camera to Stephen, and Stephen is going to take that object that I have created wordlessly and use it to show that he understands what I have created. So if I, do something like this, and then I cast it out like that, and then hand it to Stephen, he would take it, and then he would demonstrate that he understands that it is indeed a tennis racket, a fishing pole.
Oh, okay.
A fishing pole. And then he would take that fishing pole and then shape it, because again, it's this magical improv goo, and shape it into something. Okay, he's flattening it out. See what he's doing. And okay, yeah. All right. Yeah. Nice flat circle. Oh, and he has thrown me a Frisbee, and I will throw it back and play some Frisbee golf. So we are going to play with some improv goo through these breakout rooms. And again, we'll go in that alphabetical order. So whoever's got that first name in the alphabet, you get to take, actually, here's the other magical thing about improv goo. I'm going to hand it through the camera, and all of you can take your own back out of it. It multiplies. It's like loaves and fishes, but in improv form. And then you can use it in your breakout rooms, pass it around, mold it into something, demonstrate its use, have the other person take it, and then move around the circle, keep changing it each and every time into something new. Is that clear? Okay, Rhonda, can we have 5 minutes, please? All right. Thank y'all. That is the hardest game we will play today, by the way. And that's the first time I've ever played it virtually, so thank you for playing along. We almost made it all the way around. We didn't quite make it all the way around, so apologies to those of you that we didn't get to in this. I would like us to open this up, and if you would, here's the question. What made that game work, and what made it difficult? And you can unmute yourself and share, or you can share in the chat. It might get a little unmanageable, so I might invite, we'll see how this goes, just kind of unmuting or chatting. What made that game work? What made that game manageable or difficult?
You really had to pay attention.
You really had to pay attention. That's good. I see somebody in the chat saying screen limits, couldn't always see what the hands were doing. Right. It was sometimes a little difficult to see. What else?
Our group really got into it. So when you get into it, it makes it a lot more fun. We got around a couple times.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Got around a couple of days. So the more invested you were in it, the better it got. Okay. Interesting. What else?
Feeling like it was safe. People were being friendly, and we all shared the same embarrassment.
You all saying the same embarrassment. Yeah. I don't think anybody necessarily felt like they would have been an expert at this game, right? Yeah. What else?
People were very surprisingly creative.
Yeah, people were surprisingly creative. We had a Carol on phone in our group, and so obviously couldn't do the visual part of that. But we adapted and had Carol describe something that we then used as an improv goo object. I was the only one that didn't understand what she was talking about. She said it was pink and it has petals, and everyone else in the group knew that she was talking about a flower. I thought she was talking about a bicycle. So I immediately went into the remedial class. Had to be open to playing. Yes. Open to playing makes it much better. Sharing with each other. Anybody else want to share anything? What made it work?
Remembering which letter of the alphabet you were.
Knowing alphabetical order. Yeah, I also blew that in the first group. I jumped out a turn in the first group. So what else?
Our group made it around twice, and I think it's because we all used objects that we all knew.
So there's a shared kind of cultural understanding, right? So
Yes.
if there's a shared cultural understanding, we had someone in our group that made a fan and realized that may have been more easily accessible to somebody in the East than in the West, and East and West in the world, not in the United States. I think there's something interesting, and I'm glad that somebody said something about paying attention, because really that's the pastoral instinct, right? That's what it means to be, and I mean pastoral instinct as something that people as Christians share. I'm not just talking about people who are in that role of pastor. Paying attention in order to understand what's going on. We are so focused as Presbyterians on words, and I am steeped in that tradition. I am born and raised and baptized at First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta. You can't get more Presbyterian than a church that has the word first in it. Am I right? And so we love words, and yet there's so much that's communicated physically in the way we talk. If I'm talking to somebody and their arms are crossed and they're looking at me with a little bit of a glare and I say, "How are you?" And they say, "I'm fine." Are they really fine? No.
Probably not.
Probably not. And maybe they don't want to tell me, fine. But if I'm paying attention, then I know that there's something else going on that I need to be paying attention to. I want to tell a quick story about this because when I first encountered this type of game in improv, I was in a class, an improv class, which is the most fun you can have for paying tuition. And we played a whole game, a whole evening of games where we didn't use a single object that was real. It was all fake. It was all imaginary. And when we spoke, we only spoke in intentional gibberish, just absolute nonsense, not a foreign language, not another language, not barely recognizable English, but nonsense. But because we were so good about what we were doing and because we did it so well, it was, everybody knew exactly what was happening in every scene. So for example, there was a scene where the teacher sat us down in two chairs, leaned over, played with this, what was the steering wheel, adjusted what we figured out was a rear view mirror, and then it became very clear that we were talking about a car. And then somebody got into the back of the car and leaned forward and said, blah, 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 blah. And we said, oh, we get to blah, blah, blah. So now we knew we were in a taxi. And then we took that taxi to a drive-through restaurant and rolled down the window, you know, so all we were doing, and it was the funniest and the clearest we had been in that class, and nobody said a recognizable word. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a gift and it is a delight, and I'm a preacher, and words are pointless right now. It was a fundamental shift for me. Words are important, they're helpful, they're good, but they're only part of the picture. So what I would like, just kind of thinking as a group here, let's connect some theological dots here. What are we talking about here? What does this possibly say to us about what it means to be a person of faith? This whole idea of communication, this whole idea of words, this whole idea of actions. Any thoughts?
Well, actions are more powerful than words.
Actions are more powerful than words. It's not just what we say, it's what we do. Yeah, Yvonne.
Me being a former health professional and being in the field I was in, I had to pay attention to the nonverbals.
Yes. Yes. Without it violating HIPAA, can you give us an example?
Example, someone may say that they're feeling fine.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that they wince.
Oh, good.
When you touch a certain area of their abdomen.
Good.
Raise their arm.
Yeah.
Or so when they wince, you know that they're having some kind of discomfort.
That is so good. The body can tell the truth when sometimes we might not want to do it with our mouths. Oh, wow. That's powerful. Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, Sue.
I think sometimes words keep us in our head.
Yeah.
And there's a big distance between our head and our heart. Mm-hmm. And words can often keep us cerebral. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it's why music, art lets us escape from our heads for a moment.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, Christine.
I have noticed since I have been doing worship online most of the time, and I'm doing it via Facebook Live and not via Zoom. So I get no feedback from the congregation. And I didn't realize until I started doing that how much I rely on the nonverbal.
Oh, that's so good.
From my congregation as I'm preaching.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's funny, that makes me think of when I moved into ministry, my spouse, we very quickly realized that she was unaware of her facial expressions during worship. And so I would come up to her after worship and say, "You were frowning a lot. Was I saying something wrong?" She said, No. So she always tried to smile when I was preaching, just to let me know you're okay. Yeah, that's good. What else? I'm gonna scroll through the screen so I can see anybody. But if I don't call on you, just jump in. Let's see. I see Cynthia. Yeah.
Yeah, I have almost the opposite of what happened with Christine. We do Zoom, and our pastor is close up when she's speaking.
Yeah.
And you get much more emotion and feeling for what she's saying because we're close up instead of far up on a. I love it.
That's good. That's really good. Wow. JC.
For me, this brings up, the classic thing around ministry of presence. It's when you're sitting with somebody pastorally, it's not about what you say. It's about actually being there and incarnating and theologically and pastorally and spiritually that relationship.
If I had a bell, I would ring it for saying incarnating. That's a good ding word. Yeah. We're talking about incarnation. We are bodily beings. We are embodied by God who gifts us with these bodies. And that is part of and y'all have touched on so many of the important things of just this notion of it's not just what we say, it's what we do. There's an integrity between thought and action. The head is part of the body. We often segment it off, but it's part. And the more we learn about the neurology and the biochemistry of our heads and our brains. It is all integrated, it is all part of a whole. That is so good. That is so good. If you say one thing and do another, right? What's the old hymn? They'll know we're Christians by our love. That's so good. So good. I want to keep us moving. We're going to play a couple more games here. This one, same rule about going in alphabetical order. And Nicole, I want you to be in charge of all the alphabet from now on. And in this game, and I'm going to invite Rhonda to help me demonstrate this first. So this game, whoever goes first is going to make an offer of a place to go or an activity to do. And the second person, no matter what that offer is going to say, "No, I don't want to do that. But instead, how about if we," and then does another one. So Rhonda, can you and I demonstrate that? I'll start and then I'll throw it to you. Mm-hmm. And then you and I will go back and forth just to demonstrate for a minute. So Rhonda, let's go on a picnic. It's a beautiful day. Let's go on a picnic.
No, I don't want to go on a picnic. Let's go for a walk.
Oh, I don't want to go for a walk. I like sitting down. So how about if we go to a socially distanced movie theater?
No, I don't want to do that. That's boring. How about we go for a swim? It's a nice day.
No, I'm aquaphobic. So, okay, so you get the idea. So we're going to do that in our breakout rooms. Let's do 3 minutes this time. And just keep doing that in a circle like Ron and I were doing back and forth. Excellent. I don't know about in your group, but in my group, we had fun because people would come up for not just say no, they would come up with the reasons for no. So we had a lot of fun with that. That game is called No But. Take that whatever way you want. Now we're going to play the exact same game, but a flip. So this is the yes and. So Rhonda and I are going to demonstrate this again. I'm going to make an offer, and no matter what it is, Rhonda is going to say yes to that offer and add to it. Now I want to be very clear about this. Yes and can also be used in a sneaky way where you say, let's go on a picnic. Yes, and as soon as we get to the picnic, let's leave and go on a walk. That's not truly yes and. It would be more like, yes, let's go on a picnic and let's bring sandwiches. Okay, so a detail that builds the story. Rhonda, let's you know what? Airfares are cheap. Let's take a trip.
Yes, and let's go to Arizona.
Yes, we'll go to Arizona, and while we're in Arizona, we will go out into the desert so that we can experience what it was like for John the Baptist.
Yes, and we can go to the Grand Canyon.
Yes, and while we're there, we can find a shop that has trinkets to bring back to everybody here in Lehigh.
Yes, and I bet we can find keychains that have cacti on them that everybody would love.
That's right, and they always have Marthame on the name for the name. Okay, yeah. So same thing, 3 minutes. You get the idea. This is the yes and version of the game that we just played. So 3 minutes in breakout rooms. All right, I am always curious. I love playing this game with groups, and I am always curious to hear the answer to this next question. How many of you, by a show of hands in your screens, preferred the first game, the no but? See a couple of hands. Yeah, I see a few hands. How many of you preferred the second game, the yes and game? That's typically what I find. It's really interesting. I remember playing this game with a group of pastors, and they almost to a person said that they preferred the first game because they didn't feel like they often had permission to say no to other people. And so it was empowering, which I thought was really insightful and also kind of terrifying, but also really, really interesting. But I do think typically what we find is that second game does feel more, I don't know. You tell me what was it about? For those of you that said that yes and was more fun for you, what was it about it that was more fun?
More comfortable.
There is always more fun.
Comfortable, Chaz?
Yeah.
What was comfortable about it?
It just seems like everything goes better when two people are kind of on the same page.
Oh, that's good.
Rather than positive, negative.
It's the rowing the boat in the same direction kind of principle, right? Yeah. Good. I'm sorry. And somebody else was jumping in.
Agreement is a beautiful thing.
Agreement is a beautiful thing, right? Yeah. Gloria chimes in on chat. It's easier to answer. Yeah.
I disagreed because I thought that it was a little chaotic.
Oh, chaotic. Good. Yeah. Yeah, it can be chaotic.
Disjointed,
Disjointed.
I liked it because the first one was a study in all of the frustrations I've always had with people when we can't decide what to do. And in the second one, we went to France.
You went to France?
We did. We went to France.
My goodness. Well, we built an ark on our trip out west in a van where we were making joyful noise due to our mixtape. Sue says, yes, and seems to build community. What else?
I think with the first one, it stopped.
Oh, interesting.
Where with the second one, it had both movement, imagination, and community. So
yeah.
I like that better.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we hold on to Yvonne's point because it's important. It can get chaotic that way, right?
Yes.
It's and yet that chaos is still in a direction, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just, nah, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. Yeah. Anybody else?
I wanted to say that I while I enjoyed the yes and, I thought it was harder because you had to try to work with somebody else's idea.
Oh, that's good.
So it was part of the chaos and part of the connecting.
That's good.
But it was harder because I could just say no, and then it all just became my story.
Right. It's a lot easier to kind of come up with something on your own and say, well, I don't want to go to Norway. I want to go to Finland. Well, I don't want to go to Finland. I want to go to China. I don't want to go, Whereas with this, you'd say, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I think going on a trip right now in the midst of a pandemic would be a really good idea. In fact, let's do X, right? So that can be a challenging piece of it as well. So if you've heard anything about this world of improv theater, and particularly improv comedy, you may have heard this principle of yes and that's exactly what we were demonstrating. The first rule of improv is the yes and. You create a reality on stage, if we take it into that world of improv comedy, two people go on stage, one person creates a reality and the other person accepts the reality that has been created and builds it. There's a famous story about Del Close and Joan Rivers in the early days of the Second City in Chicago, where they went on stage and there was no script. They were improvising this whole thing. And Joan Rivers says to Del Close, "Honey, I want a divorce." And Del Close says, "But what about the children?" And Joan Rivers says, "You idiot, we don't have any children," which was a very funny line, but the scene was over. And Del Close talked about it years later, saying, immediately I lost trust because here I was bringing this idea of children to the scene, and immediately she says, "That's not real." So we lose trust. So the importance about yes and is that building of trust. There's a lovely book called Improv Wisdom, which in it has some of these games and activities and principles and then ways to implement them in your life. And there was one of the exercises in this was pick somebody in your life to say yes and to for a week. And at the time I was a relatively new parent. I think my son was 5-ish, something like that. And I realized as a parent, I was saying no to him all the time. And it had gotten to the point where it wasn't about keeping him safe. It was really about my power and it was a reflexive action. And so I decided I was going to say yes and to him for a whole week. And it was going fine. And it was interesting. I was noticing a change in dynamic. And then at one point he said, and I don't remember this, he always tells me I'm not telling the story right, which is fine. But he said something like, "Hey, Papa, why don't we go play ball in the street?" Now, there's a couple of levels of yes and here. The yes and that we just played would be yes, and we will also put barricades in the street in order to protect ourselves or something like that. There's another layer of yes and, which is a little deeper to get to and important to get to, because yes and at that superficial level is a way of maintaining power and maintaining status quo, and also can become kind of a mode of codependence. No matter what you say, I'm going to agree with. The deeper yes and the more important one, I think, is finding the truth, the goodness in that offer and agreeing to that and adding to that. So if we take that example of playing in the street, the yes would be, yes, I love the idea of going outside and playing ball. We don't do it enough. And can we find a place that's safe to do it? Or for example, if you've done this yes and thing and somebody wants to give you a cupcake and you are diabetic, instead of saying yes to that, the deeper yes and says, "That is so lovely. I appreciate this. Would you mind if I gave this to someone else because of my diabetes," for example? Does that make sense, that distinction? I think that's a really critical distinction. It's not just an automatic agreement. It's this deeper level. And I think that deeper level gets to the point of canoeing the mountains, which Todd Bolsinger so lovely puts it about this idea of Lewis and Clark heading west, trying to find that northwest route via waterway, hitting the Rocky Mountains, realizing they're not going to get it. The literal yes at that superficial level would say, "We couldn't find it. Let's go back to Washington." The deeper yes says, "We can continue this exploration in a new way. And we'll find what's on the other side, even if it's not the waterway we expected." I think that's a deeper yes and. I want to make sure that we give the Reverend Laddie Benton time for his remarks. So I'm going to wrap up here a little bit earlier or with a little shorter bit of time. But before I do that, I would like to see, with this principle of yes and, if you can imagine theologically what that might look like. What does the yes and speak to you theologically?
It allows for movement of the spirit.
Say that again, Rhonda.
It allows for movement of the spirit.
It allows for movement of the spirit. Yeah, it can be really unexpected. I'm going to go out on a limb and expect that nobody in your breakout room knew where your yes ands would take you when you started. What else?
As my spiritual director would say, it makes God bigger.
Yeah, it makes God bigger. What does it look like if we imagine that God is at work in something? Yeah.
yes and opens possibilities that you may not see.
Opens up possibilities you may not see. Yeah, because we are automatically limited by our own imaginations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sue says, tough love. I assume, Sue, you're talking about that deeper level of yes and, that notion of tough love that's encouraging but honest. That's good. What else?
I think it encourages us to listen to the voices in our midst.
Yeah.
That we might not always give the spotlight to.
This is an equity exercise, really, or I don't know if it's equity as much as it is justice, because equity would prioritize voices that have been silenced. But there is a justice to it. In the way we were playing, everybody had a say based on what your name was. That was the order. And you were going to help build this thing together with us. Nobody got to say, well, no, we're not going to do that. There was no veto power. Yes, what else?
Challenges us to try new things. We may not have ever gone to Arizona.
Oh yeah.
And and the ideas of spending time with animals and things may not be something that you've ever thought about before.
Yeah.
And so it challenges you to partner.
That's good.
As the theological word would be partner.
That's great. I do want to wrap up here. There are a multitude of these games and exercises, an endless number of them. What I hope you see is also the possibility to take these games and exercises, have fun with them, act silly, and then get to something deeper, to dig down. What happened? What does this make you think about? What does this cause you to do? And it's not because you agree with the rule. I think, Yvonne, your point about chaos is a perfect example of that. It was chaos. Yes, if we are always agreeing, it could really be chaotic. So how do we get to that next level? What does that next level look like? And I encourage you to think about even playing these games in your churches with your leadership, looking for some ways to incorporate them so that you break down the barriers. Humor is such a good way. Laughter is such a good way to build social connection, especially and even and especially in a time like now where we are virtual. And then to take it to that deeper level. I think yes and is God's gift to us, because I think that's what God's stance is towards us. It's that notion that I talked about in the sermon. I don't think God causes social ills. And yet I think God can take those and be at work through those in order to move us to a new place. It's the line from Genesis about what you intended for ill, God intended for good. And God is able to draw that good out. And drawing that good out sometimes means ending a system that is unjust in order to create one that is new and good and helps to build the world that God desires. So I thank you for letting me be with you here this morning. I love playing. I love to get to play with y'all. I hope that play becomes something that you can bring into your ministry, because play is very serious work. Reverend Laddie Benton, I am pleased to be able to share this space with you after hearing about your incredible witness there and the work that God has done with you and through you. And so I now turn this over to you to share a word and a benediction with us.
Let me jump in. Hang on there, Laddie. Let me jump in just for 1 second.
Out of order. Out of order.
Marthame, I thought you were Presbyterian. Son of a gun. Marthame, thank you so much for challenging us. Thank you for opening us up to some new insights, new possibilities. And you're in a long line now of folks who have been challenging us throughout this year as we seek to risk our comfort. And so thank you for helping us to stretch that a bit more. And we will continue to await those good stories that you have yet to tell us about J.C. Austin in his youthful days. Steph and J.C., on behalf of the Vision Board, anything you need to say, want to say?
Just thanks to Marthame and thanks to the Presbytery for being willing to play, and look forward to see what we continue to build through this.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Steph?
and continue to look for. We do have wonderful plans still forthcoming for other opportunities for us to learn and grow as leaders in creative ways. So there are plans in the works, and just keep looking out for them. And we so appreciate your participation as we continue to grow as a presbytery.
And if you could all look right at Marthame, and we're going to say, that's great. On 3. 1, 2, 3. That's great. Thanks, Marthame. I have one other piece of business. The Reverend Darcy Hawk is with us. Hi, Darcy. I was looking for you earlier, and if I missed you, I apologize. We want to introduce Darcy to all of you. Darcy has begun as of September 1st as the interim pastor of the Shawnee Presbyterian Church. Darcy, welcome to Lehigh Presbytery. We are so glad to have you as a colleague in ministry, and know that we're holding you and the Shawnee congregation in our prayers as you folks venture forth.
Thank you.
Darcy, say one quick word. Where do you come from?
Over the mountains and far away in the land of Pittsburgh.
Oh, I see. Is your passport current?
It is current, yes, which got me a post office box here in Shawnee.
Nice.
I know.
And are we going to have to listen to Steelers language now?
I don't do football. I don't do
All right. There are several others around here that are now not too happy, but okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Darcy. It's good to have you, and welcome to Lehigh Presbytery.
Thank you.
Let me acknowledge that Marthame has put in the chat box another resource, God, Improv, and the Art of Living by Marianne McGibbon Donna, a PCUSA minister. And Marthame, the other book you referenced was Improv Wisdom.
Yep. I will put that in the chat as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for taking the time. Thank you for continuing to be open to new ways of being and doing the Presbytery's ministry. I'll get you there, Rhonda. I'm grateful that we're all patient and full of grace as we navigate some new possibilities for how we meet and how we do our life together.